And welcome to the Go Earn It podcast. I'm your host, Shane Sparks. Today's guest, a four-time NCAA qualifier, two-time All-American, of course, a 2012 Olympian, Jared Frayer, who joins us from Blacksburg, one of my favorite guys in this sport, and you know I mean that. It's great to see your face, Jared. How you doing?
I'm great. I'm great, Shane. It's awesome to be catching up with you. It's been a while, and just appreciate you reaching out and doing what you do for wrestling. And man, excited to be with you this morning.
Well, let's get after it. Good hard hand fight. I'm going to be heavy on your head. I got a pretty good level change. It's going to be constant pressure. I can promise you this, Jared. Nobody's getting hit for stalling on this one. So you are from Florida, which I always find interesting when guys are from Florida. It's a good wrestling state, but back when you were growing up, it wasn't in the likes of Pennsylvania, Illinois, New Jersey. But you found a way in Florida. What are your first memories as a young wrestler in Florida?
Man, that's taking it way back. Yeah, even just to tell you the truth, the best times a lot were the days that Amateur Wrestling News or some of those magazines showed up at your doorstep and you got to catch up on, I was such a fan of the sport of, all around the country and throughout the world, really, because I was around some great minds as a kid, wrestling minds. And to be able to catch up with all that stuff without the internet was something that I look forward to. I read that thing cover to cover and 2 or 3 times. And that's what excited me, catching up on what was going on around the country and really catching up my mind on what I was lacking in the sport, growing up in Florida. My dad was my coach pretty much all the way up to high school. He was technically my high school coach, but he kind of passed me off to a club coach, a guy named Glenn Goodman, he was always on the ladder, kind of behind John Smith and then John Fisher, and was at Foxcatcher and wrestled at Oklahoma actually, and just kind of helped me kind of fast track from my freshman year through college, and that's what I looked forward to, just getting better and traveling and catching up with what was going on throughout the country. And usually it was like the Zaddicks and oh gosh, I wrestled Mike Zaddick and Bill Zaddick, when we were both 6, 7 years old. We travel up to Billings, Montana, and a couple places in Michigan and Indianapolis. The AAU Nationals was the big to do back then as a little kid. USA Wrestling was just kind of, didn't have a whole lot of youth group or age group type stuff, and it was all AAU. So we traveled the country to try and catch up with the Zaddicks. If we were doing good by the Zaddicks, we were in good shape.
Who are your favorite wrestlers? You mentioned the Zaddicks, but who are your favorite guys growing up that you paid attention to? Because one thing, Jared, and I love history, but a lot of guys, it always surprises me, big time wrestlers where they tell me, yeah, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to college wrestling. It always surprises me. So you are a fan of the sport at a young age. Who are your favorite guys to follow?
My dad always gave us the opportunity to travel the country and go to, the University of Iowa wrestling camps. Big camp that was going on was the Quest for Gold, and it was Andre Metzger, a guy from Michigan, wrestled at Oklahoma. But I would pay attention to the Barry Davises and we got to go to the '84 Olympic trials and watch some of those incredible matches. Kenny Monday, John Smith, Barry Davis, kind of list goes. Even Ken Chertow, he was a guy that kind of came out of nowhere and made the Olympic team, which was pretty cool in the 88 Olympic trials in Pensacola. So some of those guys, it was just it was typically the international guys, just because there was no college wrestling in Florida. So I really paid attention to more of the Olympic styles, I guess. And that's all I wrestled. I didn't wrestle a folk style match till I was a freshman in high school. It was all AAU, all freestyle, Greco-Roman. There was a thing called Sambo back in the day. We'd have the gis, and I remember wrestling Mike Zaddick in Sambo in the finals of the national tournament when I was 5 or 6 years old. So yeah, it was just those type of guys, the smaller guys, the Joe Gonzalez, Corey Bays. These are all crazy names from way back when that I would follow, and I was they scored a lot of points, and they were little guys, 105 pounds. Can you imagine that? We don't have many 105 pounders walking around anymore, but 105 pounds at the Olympic level, 114 and a half, all those guys that would score a lot of points. They were like little mosquitoes, man. They move so fast. And so yeah, some old names there, but that's who I was my guy Glenn Goodman had wrestled with those guys with Foxcatcher and wrestling on the circuit back in those days. So man, I would follow those guys, and those were my heroes. I didn't have a whole lot of anything invested in college wrestling. It was all the international styles.
When did you realize, Jared, that you were good?
Wow. I don't, that's a difficult question. I always just did what I did and loved it. And my dad was a coach. And so that's what I would tag along with him. I would videotape all this stuff, for my dad's high school team and travel the country, with his guys. And, I don't think I really gave myself the credit that maybe I was at a point where I was getting pretty good until really my senior year. I wrestled Mike Zadek. I keep bringing up Zadek, but Mike Zadek in the Fargo finals. I was already committed to a school. I'd signed. I was going to Oklahoma, but I didn't feel like I was there until that moment where I wrestled Mike Zadek in the finals in Fargo and stepped over, gut wrench, and pinned him. And I was like, all right, maybe I got something here.
You won 3 Florida state championships. What memories stand out still, 30 years later?
Really just the relationships. Some of my best friends are guys that I grew up wrestling with, and even guys that weren't even, didn't wrestle in my high school, guys from around the state. One of the guys was from Orlando, wrestled with me growing up, ended up playing football in college, but a guy who's, thick as blood. I mean, he's my best friend to this day. And, being able to travel the country, going to the Southeast regionals and in New Orleans, seeing Bourbon Street and some of that craziness for the first time. Definitely the relationships. I go back and do a camp or two each year in Florida, and just, the guys that are coaching now in high school and being successful, and just that are, you can go back and shoot the crap with those guys, like your high school, freshmen and sophomores. So those are the cool things that I continue to love about that, and the small circle that wrestling is.
In winning those 3 state titles, what's a moments within those matches that stands out?
Just remembering I get the opportunity to teach a lot of technique at camps and, around the country, and just being able to say, hey man, this is the stuff I did when I was, I'm the KISS guy. Keep it simple, stupid. The stuff that I did when I was a freshman in high school is the same stuff I'm teaching right now, and the stuff that I do to my college guys right now. So just thinking back on all the cool things where, I pinned a guy in my junior year in the state finals, and, a bundle or I give all these names, the barbed wire, that, all these things. It's fun to just reenact those moments. And one of the coolest moments for me was, it wasn't me wrestling. It was my brother-in-law was losing a match. And the kid that he's losing to 10 seconds, he's hyping up the crowd, kind of showboating. My brother-in-law catches this guy on his back to win the state title with the time. The ref holds the last near fall point for dramatic experience and throws up the 3 points, and he was down 2 and he wins by 1. And it was just, something cool like that, to this day, I'll remember like it was yesterday.
Talking about technique, and you've been around this sport for so long at the highest levels, had a ton of success yourself. You've been around some great coaches. When it comes to technique, Jared, over the years, what's a technique you've gained a new appreciation for? And maybe what's something that you're like, not as big of a fan as this particular technique as maybe I was 10 years ago?
Well, I think the old wrist roll, the roll through tilt, man. If I would have known that in high school and college, golly, that's a fun move, and it's a move you get caught in. It's obviously really, really difficult to defend. You got a guy like Spencer Lee, and the list goes on and on and on. That you get a cross wrist or a wrist on a guy, he's going to score a lot of points with it. So that's something that, man, I was like, golly, what a simple move, and something that, man, it is so difficult to defend. So that's one that, man, I wish I would have known that. I've really spent a lot of time, trying to perfect that position, whether it's from the wrist roll or the guy defends, and I can find that reinforced bar, and it's just super cool to just break that situation down. And then really the other one is going backwards, where my if I got to an underhook, I knew I was going to score. I would definitely put the guy in defense mode. and the older I get, I need a shoulder reconstruction. I need all kinds. So, I don't get to do that as much. So that's kind of, I have to find another way to score when I'm wrestling these young bucks. So definitely the underhook is something that, it's lost its luster, but I love teaching it, guys, my guys, Caleb Henson and Andonian and those guys that they're so good in that position. So it's still fun to teach, but I can't do it as much. So it's lost a little luster for me.
Talk about the recruiting process. Coming out of Florida, you said you won Fargo. What was the recruiting process like for you?
I always wanted to go to Penn State, and that's before Penn State was Penn State, because there was a coach there, a Japanese coach who had coached my club coach, Glenn Goodman, and we had that connection. I was huge growing up in Florida. What do you do in Florida as a kid? You root for college football teams. I was I was born in Miami. I was a Hurricane fan, man. I loved college football, and there was not a man in sports that didn't identify to me as a wrestler like Joe Paterno. And, and obviously it's a touchy subject now, but he was a guy that was hard nosed. He pack your lunch and go to work and do things the right way. And so that's why, really that's why I wanted to go there. I had a little bit of a connection there, and Joe Pa was the man. So I got the opportunity, pretty much the same opportunity as I did with the University of Oklahoma. And I just fell in love with Jack Spates was the coach there. Mark Manning was the assistant coach. My boyhood hero, this kid, David Kilgard, who won 6 Fargo titles. He was a stud coming out of Iowa. Everyone thought he was going to go to Iowa. He went to Oklahoma. Jack Spates talked him into going to Oklahoma. He was there. He was my host, and I was like, dude, this is perfect. So ended up at Oklahoma. I canceled my visit to Oklahoma State. John Smith called, and it just broke me over the phone. You're not going to come to Stillwater. It's your last visit. This is the worst mistake you're ever going to make. I remember my sister was on the phone. It was a collect call, and she was like, wow, he really gave it to you. John Smith's like your hero. And he said, you just made the worst mistake of your life. I was like, oh gosh. So we've chopped it up a couple of times, me and Coach Smith, and about that call, and it turned out okay.
How many visits did you take?
I wrestled in the Sunkist Open, which was out at Arizona State. So I took an unofficial to Arizona State, and then I took 4 official visits: Penn State, West Virginia, University of North Carolina, and then Oklahoma.
And what was it about Oklahoma? 2 or 3 things that really iced the deal?
Kilgard being the guy that I anticipated him being. Now he's still to this day one of my best friends in my wedding, all that good stuff. Just an unbelievable person, as anybody who knows David Kilgard would tell you. Just being on that campus felt like it was home, and that's what I still tell these kids these days. You don't know until you know, and so give us that opportunity to come on campus and feel that feeling that you can't sell over a Zoom or a phone call. I felt that there. And then, just kind of, it just felt right. And, Jack Spates is one of the best at selling a program and building a program for that matter. And, it was cool. It was further than I probably, thought I would ever go to school, but, man, it worked out. And, to this day, I'll be a Sooner fan, through and through. Boomer Sooner.
What do you remember from the first meetings with Jack Spates and Mark Manning?
Man, they're good. They're good. Some of the best in the business as far as, they're not, and I think they've getting to know them better. They're not the used car salesmen that maybe they were back then. But man, they were good. Coach Manning was not too much out of college, I think. And he showed up in my doorstep. He's in sunny Florida in a freaking Camaro convertible, man, let that hair flow. Jack Spates showed up with his guitar and play a song of, his latest national champion that he made up. And man, they're good. They brought the heat, and I think they brought it to anybody, whether it was a walk-on or a full scholarship guy, they could, throw the wool on you real fast. And Coach Manning actually left. He recruited me, got me. And he was the guy, dude. He's like he is today, but 30 years younger, and man, he could sell a place. And he had left and taken the UNI job over that summer. And I was like, dude, man, that was my guy. I might have to look elsewhere. And then I actually who did I get a call from? So I found out Chuck Barbie took the head assistant job. And I was like, dude, I don't know this guy. Who's Chuck Barbie? And Kendall Cross was a really good friend of the family. And Kendall actually called. And I was doing a camp with Kendall. And he said, hey, man, just Chuck Barbie, best technician you'll ever be around. Probably the best guy never to win an NCAA title that I've ever been around. You're gonna love this guy. And sure enough, he was what the program needed, what I needed, and just a crushed it as a coach for me.
You're one of the best recruiters in the country. I mean, your resume speaks for itself. And I know you can't give away all the secrets, Jared, but you've been on both sides of the table for a long time in these situations. Tell me something that's maybe a little under the radar that really has a big impact on recruiting that most people might not otherwise think.
Man, like you said, it's a secret sauce a little bit. I think it's the relationship game. It's getting to know the kid, being around the family, obviously, getting into these living rooms, creating those relationships, and making them as genuine as possible. And a lot of these kids, the vast majority of them, you're not going to get a chance to coach, but that doesn't stop you from creating that relationship. And you never know what comes full circle, and those relationships, become true relationships, where you're on a personal level later in their careers, whether it's through the RTC or what, this transfer portal. Who knows when you get a chance to coach these kids. So, make them good, make them lasting. Don't just, it's just not a fake, it's not a fake relationship. It's not all surface. We dig deep, and I want to make it not a 4-year relationship, but a 40-year relationship where I'm going to be in these guys' weddings and be friends with them for the long haul. So it takes a village. Coach Roby and we are super we go back and forth really well, and that's kind of our motto, to create those relationships, because you never know what's going to happen in the future. And we were excited about getting guys to brighten our culture. I think our culture is really strong, and we do a really good job of vetting these guys and figuring out if they're the right ones. If we're not just going to get guys because they're really good at wrestling. We have to make sure they fit what we're trying to do here, and it takes a certain guy to build this culture, and one guy can unravel it real fast. So I think that's what we're looking not to do. So that makes it easy for us, because we know what we're looking for.
John Smith told me once the most disappointed that he ever was in not getting somebody was Lincoln McElravy. So looking at your career as a coach, I want to know, Jared, you got one guy. I want to know the guy that, for whatever reason, when you got him, you were the most fired up, whether or not he panned out just at that time. Who's the guy that you were most fired up to get? And who's the guy that's giving you the call saying he's going someplace else that stung the most? Give me those two guys.
Well, I'll say, like, same thing about like winning Fargo and kind of saying, okay, I'm pretty good at this. Same thing goes when Coach Pritzlaff and I were in Madison, getting that call from Destin McCauley. He was the number one guy all around. Dude's 5-time Minnesota, or 6-time. I don't even know how many Minnesota State titles he won, but he had just gone to Ohio State. He'd gone to these other places, and he was the number one pound for pound guy. And he called us and said, I'm going to be a Badger. And I was just like, it was like, all right, we've made it, man. I think we had the number one or two class in the country. And, I think we just taken 4th in the country. So it was an exciting time. And I thought he was the real deal. He had beaten some really good guys, and not only in the high school levels, but above him. And so that was really exciting. And then the bitter losses, I guess, it's really been in the last 6 or 7 years here. Because I think, it's a little different. Recruiting's a little different. We don't have to recruit as big a broad base, so we can really focus on the guys that we really want. But Mason Parris was a hard one. Mason Parris and probably Sammy Sasso. And they both, obviously, it's different when you see how successful they've been. But just the impact they've had on each program, right? Sammy Sasso he's an unbelievable recruiter in his own right. I mean, the guy can the guy sells his program. He is a loyal dude that, he just continues to build his brand and his base and just does an unbelievable job with it. And, obviously we've been able to stay close to the family now that we have Sonny, and, he's going to be a savage in his own right. But same thing with Mason Paris. I mean, dude's branding himself at a whole nother level, and he could be the favorite to win a gold medal in Paris this year. So that's pretty exciting stuff. I know Roby had the same kind of, a year or two before I got here, he had the same type of relationship with Kyle Snyder. We've been top two and in a lot of these studs, same with Carter Strachey and, a couple other guys that, man, it came down to the last two and it stung. I mean, we thought Carter was going to be a Hokie for a long time. But kudos to him, man. The guy's a savage, and excited to see where his career takes him.
The recruiting stuff is fun because it all works out. Everybody's got their own path, and I'm a big believer in it all work. It is what it is. But it's just the what ifs are fun. And you're right. I remember doing an interview with Kyle Snyder. This has got to be 8 years ago. It's been a while. And I asked him, if you didn't go to Ohio State, where would you have went? And you're right. Virginia Tech. I was like, really? Never knew that. Never knew that. And I remember asking him, what was the secret sauce with Ohio State? It was an email Tom Ryan sent him about faith. And he said, that just really, that was kind of the hook. So with you, Jared, if you don't go to Oklahoma, where would you have gone?
Probably Penn State. Penn State was, definitely a close second. It's wild. They were kind of the front runners in the gray shirt type stuff. They had another stud by the name of Jamar Billman, who was coming in from Pennsylvania at kind of the same weight class, and they wanted me to gray shirt. And he was going to wrestle, and then we kind of flip flop. And my mom wasn't real keen on that idea yet, so it didn't happen, and that was kind of really the only black mark on them. And so Oklahoma was the spot.
What were the early days like for you in that room?
They were difficult, man. They were difficult. I was, I always had a couple tricks up my sleeve, so I wasn't the guy that got beat up and never got a takedown for a year or two. But it was difficult. The kill guards, the Lightners, this guy named Rod Jones, who was a 4-time All-American for the Sooners, and it was just it was a fun room to be in. We were in the stadium, so it was like it was an old room. I mean, that program's been around for a long time. And man, there were cats falling out of the ceiling. It was awesome. It was just old school wrestling, and it was a great time. It was a great time to be a Sooner back then.
I'm always fascinated by those early times in the college room, because a lot of these guys, yourself included, you win 3 state titles. I mean, you've done a lot of winning on big stages, and there's levels to everything. Get into a college room, and it can be beat down city. And you see a lot of guys that just can't handle it mentally. Why were you ready mentally?
That's a good question. I don't know that maybe I take that back. I had a lot of great mentors in high school. There was a kid named Dustin D'Annunzio, who was a 3-time All-American for Harvard, who took a gap year my senior year. So he was in Clearwater the whole time, my whole senior year. So I took a lot of beatings from him. Made me better. He brought some guys in, a guy named Sanshiro Abe. Kerry Colott actually came down for 2 or 3 weeks. So I'd been around a lot of high level minds. So it was difficult. It was definitely something that, you had to pick yourself up from your bootstraps and get back in there. But I had some experience in that, getting beat downs from Kerry Colott and those guys in high school. But yeah, man, it was just that, like you said, I didn't know if there was going to be a way. Actually, there probably wouldn't have been a way into the lineup if the tragic, passings of the guys cutting weight. That's when it all kind of, all the weight classes separated and allowed me a spot to get in there at 149, where this guy David Kilgard was a 42 pounder. I was a 42 pounder, or a 34 pounder. I wasn't beating Michael Leitner. We had some really good matches, but I could never beat him. And so Leitner was going to go 41. Kilgard couldn't make 49 on a 2-hour weigh-in. He could the day before. He was fine. So he went up to 57, which gave me a spot into the 149 pound weight, which I don't know that it would have happened without the, it was 97 when all that went down, and the weights were the 7 pounds were added, or the 7 pounds. Yeah. 7 pounds added to each weight class.
One thing, Jared, that I'm blown away by in this conversation is the amount of studs you are around when you're a high school kid. Like, I mean, what, Kendall Cross, Kerry Collette, when you look at all the people you are around, and I know it's so much wisdom you had, so I'm really putting you on the spot here. I'm just curious about this stuff. What's one thing that you learned at that time from one of those guys, something they showed you, something they said that it was like, man, that was so big. That was going to pay off in so many big ways, and you never would have known it at that time.
Well, I guess a couple things. Kendall Cross, definitely technically, his mindset going into some of these, it was like 96. I was around him right after he made the team, right after he made the team, and in between him making the team and going and winning the Olympics. He was just like, just go get it. You got all this stuff in your box. And that's a lot of the reasons the way I wrestled, because I was around him 3 or 4 summers in a row, and just taught me so much about, the overhooks and the whizzer kicks and being good, the high gut wrenches, all this good stuff. And he's like, you get taken down, who cares? You're going to score a bunch of points, and you got to be able to be the guy that goes out there and lets it fly. That's the way you're going to wrestle. And, that's the type of person you are. And then to this day, I remember sitting in the stands, Kerry Collette was talking about, kind of giving us a little mindset session. And he said, whether it's spiritually, whether it's athletically, mentally, socially, you should be improving every single day in each of those categories. And to this day, I kind of use the quote of, why be good at one thing when you be good at, or don't be good at one thing, be good at everything, or, something that along those lines. And that's, that's kind of the way it is. You can't just excel at one thing and let everything else fall by the way. So, that was something big that he talked about, improving in every single aspect of your life each day, not just one position. So, kind of you putting those two things together, and that was big. And then to this day, I use the preparation changes. Gosh, yeah, I'm losing my train of thought here. Preparation changes expectation. So I tell it to my guys. I use it in my, and that was Jay Robinson way back in the early 90s. I heard that from him, and man, that's something that to this day, I talk to my girls about. I talk to my athletes about, my campers. If you prepare the right way, it's going to change. Whether you know or not, it changes your expectation. So, yeah, man.
What are non-negotiables with you? Absolute non-negotiables. If I talk to your guys, they're going to say, when you're wrestling for Coach Frayer, you better be doing this, this, and that, and you better not be doing this.
Be on time. And that wins a lot of things in my mind. If you're there early and doing the right thing after that, when your time is called, that's a lot of wins in my book. And so, they know if there's something going on, we got an individual or I'm leaving at 6:30 from the hotel parking lot. You're going to be there at 6:30, or you might get left. So, yeah, they think that's one of them. And, it's that covers a lot for me. It really does. It shows a lot. It shows a lot about your character, your morals, and the respect you have for not only the person you're dealing with or showing up for, but the business you're going about.
Jared, if I called up any of my kids right now and said, what's the number one rule? I don't have many rules. I kind of got 2 of them that be on time and don't litter. That's it. If you can do those, but you're right. Because if you are late, everything else crumbles. Like you got to take care of step 1. You can do everything else right. It's like, I was going to do this. Well, you weren't on, you didn't get to do it because you weren't at the meeting or whatever. You lost, you might not know it. You lost a huge opportunity because you showed up late and the guy was like, we'll go through this interview or this meeting, whatever it might be. but I know you're dead in the water because you were late. Like, can't trust you.
Yep.
Jared, awesome stuff. This is part one. We're coming back with part two. Thank you
Let's
so
go.
much.